Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And welcome back to another episode of Bears on Tap. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Sonny Verma. Sonny, we haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing?
You guys have held it down so well, you and Ron on this channel, especially analyzing all that film, doing all these breakdowns. Me being the meathead of the group, I feel like I just continue to learn so much, but I'm not going to lie. I do miss getting on camera and, discussing my opinions. And man, when you told me that we were recording today, I couldn't wait.
Yeah, and don't give us too much credit. I think we've done one episode since the draft, so it's been slow. And to be as frank as possible, this is my least favorite time of year. Like I just have such a hard time finding content this time of year, where it's just like I don't want to give fluff. I don't want to be throwing stuff out there that I don't actually think is worth discussing. And it's really hard until just like coming up here really soon as we come up to camp to find a lot that's really worth discussing between the draft to now. But here we are in the now, and we are talking about storylines that we are looking at coming into training camp to start this off. And then after that, we're going to discuss some of the roster, some of the offseason moves, and just kind of where we see this roster sitting, where we see some position battles and the general state of it. But starting it off, Sonny, where is your mind going into training camp as far as like what's the storyline that you are the most interested in?
I mean, is it a cop-out to say just monitoring the injuries to the two rookies and just seeing Hal Luther, if he's going to be able to play or not? Because obviously, the longer it takes, the less likely he's going to have much of an impact to learn everything for the first week, maybe week 2. So I think that's the number one thing I got my eye on, to see just how quickly he's able to recover.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a real question, and I came into this with a few in mind, and one of it was similar to that. So I'm gonna mention that now as part of yours. Like, I personally don't think, and this is all pure speculation, but I don't think the injury is very much for Luther Burden. I think the real issue at hand is he's not under contract. Sure. And why would I risk a tweaked knee or a tweaked ankle? Why would I risk that becoming something more when they're trying to negotiate offset language in my contract, and I'm not desperate to get to give into it? The second I'm really injured, I'm desperate to get that paycheck, right? So I'm going to give in. From that standpoint, my thought was more Ryan Poles. Excuse me, I almost said the wrong Ryan. Ryan Poles got to get these second rounders signed, and it's not Bears aren't alone with that. There are 40 unsigned draft picks right now left, and 30 of them are in the second round.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the second round picks are not signed except for 2 guys who are at the very top, who got all their stuff fully guaranteed with no offset language. You're going to need some of those higher dominoes to fall before you see the Bears second round pick sign. Like, you're going to see, like the 33, 34, 35, that's still late 30s range is where you're going to need to see some guys sign and set the precedent of, okay, where is this cutoff that agents seeks? There's always a cutoff somewhere around the second round where guys start accepting offset language. Where is that going to come into play here? But frankly, from the fan standpoint, from my standpoint, I don't care about offset language. Get these guys in camp. Exactly. Like, I don't care about the McCaskies saving $2 million in 3 years because they made a bad draft pick. Get these guys in camp so they're not bad draft picks. Get them in camp so they're producing. They're hitting the ground running from point A to point B. And they haven't had an issue with that in recent years. Not since Jaquan Brisker was the last guy they really had an issue getting signed. A lot of that came down to Cliff Stein, so I'm not too worried about it. But I still need to see it. You have 3 of these guys to get signed. That's a lot. I don't want to see one of them fall through the cracks. And if one does fall through the cracks, just based on the vibes, it sounds like it would be Luther Burden because he's putting out those diva vibes quick here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons could have been that he fell where he did. But has this always been the case? I guess you may or may not. I'm putting you on the spot here, but like, being mid-June almost, with second rounders not signing at least this high of a percentage, is this normal?
I think it's a little higher than normal right now, but generally, second rounders are the tough ones. Like the Bears, Kyler Gordon, they signed, I think it was June 22nd. I just wrote this in an article the other day. And then Gervon Dexter and Tyreek Stevenson were both like June 16th and 15th, I want to say. So it was always right on the eve of camp, maybe a day or two into camp. But it was always, they get, aside from Brisker took until late July to get done. So under Ryan Poles, it's 75% of the time they've gotten it done before camp or right at the start of camp. And the one I'm willing to throw at Cliff Stein, just because of some of the stuff we learned later on about it. But the importance of getting these guys on the field is huge. I mean, and obviously Trapillo and Shamar Turner, they've been able to get on the field some in the mini camps, and Burden's the only one who you really worry about here, I think, from the aspect of he is missing time, missing opportunities to learn and learn the new playbook that's new to everybody, and especially to him because he's never seen an NFL playbook before, and build that chemistry with his new quarterback, his new receiver mates, and get their checks down, how they like to address things.
I mean, in a way, it could be a good thing. Obviously, I want to see Luther on the field, but I also want to see Caleb and Rome develop a little more chemistry than what I saw last year. So, having more opportunities to throw it up to Rome, and I'm sure we'll talk about him in a little bit as well. This is just me being glass half full, but yeah, I would get Burden on that field. I want him, in that playbook week 1, week 2. Luckily, we do have DJ and Rome as our 1 and 2 wide receivers, so that it's not like an emergency by any stretch, but still, you want the guys, especially with how much excitement that this fan base has had since we drafted him. I think it was somewhat of a surprise, but the more that we learn about him, the more that not just Bears fans, but national writers are saying like this could be one of those steals from the draft a couple years down the line.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm excited about it. Frankly, I was so caught off guard by the pick that I was a little dumbfounded by it. And I still have some questions with it, but frankly, the guy's a very talented player. My biggest question with it is, Sonny, who I couldn't help but see all over Luther Burden's tape when I watched it, that it was just like screaming out to me, this is really similar to this guy.
Who's that?
DJ Moore. So it's that's part of why I felt very perplexed by the Luther Burden pick. I was like, so now we have 2 DJ Moores.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I don't think they're not a carbon copy of each other, but they play the game very similarly, very good with the ball in their hands, like very, very just aggressive football players as a runner and really dangerous as a runner after the catch, but not necessarily a deep threat, not a guy who's going to win on 9 routes vertically over and over. And it's kind of like I was thinking if they got a receiver in this class, it was going to be that deep threat, right? It was going to be a guy with true burner speed, and they don't have that, which isn't bad, right? Ben Johnson is a big brain, right? Ben Johnson knows how to make an offense work with the talent he has, and he had a lot of talent here. It's just I'm not sure how complementary those 2 players are, and I'm interested to see how they make that work because I do think they will. It's just a question of how. I do think there are plenty of ways to make players that are that similar work. It's just it might take a little more creativity, which is something as Bears fans we don't know a whole lot about, do we?
But that's why we're so excited, right?
Yeah.
We have a guy in charge for the first time where, we're not just talking about, hey, this is going to be a sound, defensive mind or an offensive mind. No, this is a creative player. Like we've literally watched him be creative at his last stop. And again, we're going to, I'm sure, talk about this, when it comes to the offseason. Like we've got the guy. That question is going to be with a lot of the players we have. Like, how's he going to fit in? How's he going to fit in? But for the first time in a very long time, with the people that we have in charge, we can be optimistic about it.
Mhm.
You know, it's not a negative feeling coming into it. It's like, I'm more excited to see what Ben Johnson does as opposed to the past where I'd be like, okay, how are we going to screw this situation up?
Yeah, and just in the comments here, bear down, welcome Squeegee. And we had Philip saying Luther Burden's from Missouri. He doesn't know any better. We'll forgive him. We'll let that pass.
Love you,
I
Philip.
was Mizzou ever part of the Big Ten? So I know they were Big 12 and SEC. Okay, I didn't know if they were ever part of it or not.
No. They don't have the academic standards to be in such a prestigious university.
As a Big 12 guy, I have to scoff a little. I just have to, because none of our teams can qualify for those academic standards. We're just a bunch of dum-dums down there in the Big 12. But Sonny, while we're on wide receivers, I have a question for you. Is DJ Moore a blue chip player?
I mean, see, you phrased it in a way that I don't know how to answer. If you asked me, is he a superstar? I could have easily said no. I think he's a star. Blue chip, I feel like that's contextual, right?
Right. Well, it's opinion based, right? Because blue chip means something different to everybody. And to me, I mean, superstar and blue chip go hand in hand to me. But there are guys who aren't superstars in the league that I would consider blue chip players. It's just because I have a higher opinion than the public might. And there might be guys who the public might see that I might not agree with. But I really struggle because for these graphics, which I use on my Shaving Points podcast, my other podcast, I forgot to change out the graphic at the top here. But I mark blue chip players on these guys who I see as blue chip players. And I really struggled with whether DJ Moore was one or not, especially after last year going into the year, I would have called him one. But now I have questions.
Taking a look now. I think I would. Just because he still can do a lot with that football. And I think he's talented enough, at least for another year or two, to carry an offense. Is he a top 8 wide receiver? No. But I think I would highlight him in blue.
Okay. I mean, I can go kind of either way, because generally my concept for a blue chip player is this a player who if can make up for losing other guys? Like if Rome Odunze goes down, can DJ Moore make it seem like he was never gone? Like make it all seamless. And that's where a year ago to 2 seasons ago, DJ Moore looked like that kind of guy. But last year he didn't. And now it's just how much do I give him that benefit of the doubt that he's still got that?
I think it'll be interesting to see this year now with what we all hope is going to be a vastly improved offensive line, where Caleb can hopefully make a leap to year 2 and be a little bit more comfortable and not running for his life and making more 50-50 throws, which I think he was a little hesitant to make last year. DJ, it could have been last year a season of circumstances, right? We had a head coach who should not have been a head coach, and we put him in a situation where maybe he wasn't in a situation where he could succeed. The only blue chip you have highlighted on the Bears wasn't a Bear last year.
Yep.
So maybe that sort of context matters.
Yeah, I mean, I really struggled to find blue chip players on the Bears roster. I mean, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze could be blue chips in the future. I think Darnell Wright could be a blue chip in the future. I just don't think any of those guys are there yet. Maybe they're there by the end of this year. I don't think you can preemptively mark a guy blue chip in my mind when I'm making these. I can't just start projecting like that. And then on defense, I mean, Jalen Johnson is the only blue chip that I could give for the defense, because I mean, I don't know if Javon Dexter's ever going to be a blue chip player. I think so. In scouting, there's blue chip players and there's red chip players. Those are the 2 top tiers of players, right? Blue chip is that this guy is the cream of the crop. Red chip is you're really good, but you're not quite that. To me, Montez Sweat is a clear red chip player. Every NFL roster wants that guy, but not every NFL roster is I need that guy. You know, it's like he's not going to be the automatic number one pass rusher on every roster in the league.
You know, Philip in the chat brings up a really, really good point that it's hard to be a blue chip performer when you have Shane Waldron calling the plays.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it, frankly.
Huge.
I mean, he was awful last year. And it was like, frankly, I'm at the point where I'm looking at this offense and I'm saying I'm putting last year behind. Like I'm on to this year. Like I'm Belichickian this year. I'm on to the next thing. And I'm just looking at the talent and saying, how do they stack up pure talent wise, and these numbers have production in them. So it's hard to just say that I'm moving on from that. But like, I don't know. I want to try to project forward, not so much look at what happened in the past. And I guess from that standpoint, I'm talking myself into DJ being a blue chip guy because I don't think he lost a step. I don't think anything changed about the player. I think we might have seen some of the questions with his drive or with the way that he competes and interacts with teammates and how that chemistry builds. Because one notable thing with DJ to me is he's never been on a team that won more than 7 games, I think. In 6-7 years in the NFL. And you can't put that on him, right? He's been on bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think a guy does need to learn how to be in that winning culture. I think there is something to that, especially a guy who played for Maryland in the Big Ten. How good is Maryland at football, Sonny?
Not very good.
They have some awesome athletes, but they're never actually good.
Right.
So I think there is some learning process here for DJ too of like, how do I be a winning teammate?
Yeah, you're right. You can't pin it on him, but when you talk about him, it's notable. You know, it's something that it comes across as something that you need to discuss with him. It's not because of him, but like you said, he hasn't, and maybe this is unfair. As a wide receiver, it's hard to, especially in a game of football, it depends on so many other factors. Who's throwing you the ball? How much time does that guy who's throwing the ball, how much time does he have? Who's calling the plays? You know, it's hard to pin it on a wide receiver, but I think you make a really good point. Like between the Panthers and the Bears, not exactly world-class organizations, at least on the field, but you know, he still has some notoriety. Like he's known as a very, very good wide receiver, but just maybe not an elite one.
Yeah, I think Ben Johnson made a great comment that was similar to what you're saying the other day of it was something about how much blame do you put on the quarterback for not finding a place to get rid of the football. And he's like, depends on where the receivers are in their routes and whether they hit their spots or not. Frankly, I mean, and that goes in with what you said about how much time does Caleb have? I think that's a part of it too. I think to me, when I heard Ben Johnson say that, I was like, so he watched last year's tape and said, what the hell is this guy doing? Like that's, and that doesn't take, like Caleb still gets blame in some of that too, I think. I don't want to try to absolve it saying it's not his fault, it's the receiver's fault. But like, I think it's 11 people moving as one. That's offense, right? And that means everyone needs to be on their P's and Q's on time, quarterback, wide receiver, O-line, tight end, all of them. And last year, frankly, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you said earlier, when you know, we've heard during this offseason on so many occasions about how Caleb was alone in there watching film and tape. It's just one of those where you just want to forget about last year. You know, it's a new beginning, new start. And I think maybe it's fair to say, and I think maybe we can kind of close out the topic with this is, do you think this year can prove one way or the other whether DJ Moore is a blue chip prospect?
Or just a blue chip player, I guess.
Yeah, player.
Yeah, I think if he puts up 1,200 yards 2 out of the last 3 years, pretty much, you're like, yeah, okay, this guy's got it. Like, and it's not as simple as just 1,200 yards. Like, there's not an exact number, but there's an impact level, right? How much do you feel him in games? How much gravity does he have for the defense to say, we can't let this guy get the football with one guy on him because he's going to break that tackle and he's going to go the distance. Like that type of gravity opens stuff up for everybody else. And to be a blue chip receiver, you need to carry real gravity.
Yeah, and again, and when we have that 1, 2, and 3 lined up at the wide receiver spot, all the dire circumstances we're claiming that DJ was in last year, hopefully have been taken care of this offseason. And so that's not necessarily going to be there this year, especially the biggest one being the guy who's calling the plays. So, I'm going to remain optimistic until, I have a reason not to be.
Okay. Now, I'm going to move this along to my major, I guess, key news that I'm looking for going into camp. And surprise, surprise, it's on the offensive line. I'm glad you said your first one the way you did, because it let me choose the offensive line one, because I don't know what's going to happen at left tackle. If there's one thing I know, or one thing I'm feeling, it's that Karan Amagaji's not in the picture there, which makes me really question why. Like, I just don't understand the pick anymore now. Or yeah. I kind of get the pick, I guess, but if he's not here to be a left tackle, what's he here to do? And if he can't, I don't know. I wanted to see a big step from Karan coming into camp this year, right? I wanted to see that he had put in a lot of work this offseason to get to some place where he can truly be a swing tackle for you. And I think the Ozzy Trapillo pick really raised a red flag if he is not there. And even more in minicamp, we see more and more instances that he might not be getting there to even the point of competing for the swing spot, which at this point I start to go like, well, then what, is he a backup guard? Is that what he's here for? And then it's like, or maybe Dan Rocher is saying like, this kid's got talent. We need to rebuild it from the ground up, though. We need to strip it all down and say we're restarting everything, and you need to learn the position. Which, if that's what's happening, I'd love to hear Rocher's stance on how he's feeling about Karan and what's going on there. I don't know if we ever will hear that. But back to the left tackle spot, I think it's going to be Braxton Jones and Ozzy Trapillo fighting out for it. Like, we're going to have a true position battle here. And frankly, I think Trapillo might win it. I don't know when Braxton's going to be able to get into camp. Like he was, I believe, at the mini camps, but he couldn't actually do anything because of his injury. He's still recovering from it. I think he's going to miss the first part of training camp with that injury still, it sounds like. Ozzy's getting a lot of chances to prove himself. And I'll tell you what, pads haven't gone on. And it's real hard to feel good about an offensive lineman until you see him in pads against NFL competition. But he is saying everything correctly, and he is putting out there into the media that I have the mindset that you want an offensive tackle.
It's not just him, though. Like, of all the players that I catch every Bears press conference, just to soak up as much as I can, especially about the new guys. And the one name that has surprised me that comes up as often as it does is him. So it's the coaching staff that really recognizes that, like, his potential and how well he's played. So I think that's a fantastic pick. And you're right. I do still think, pending injury, Braxton is going to be starting game 1. But I think this is much more of a battle than probably the average Bears fan would assume it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I want to make this clear because I was somewhat critical of this draft pick when it happened, for anyone out there who might have caught our draft show or any of the content we put out after. And I don't not like Ozzy Trapillo. I actually really like Ozzy Trapillo. I just had a early to mid third round grade on him, and they took him in the late second, right? I was nitpicking on it. But I just felt like, to me, I was sitting there going, yeah, Braxton Jones at left tackle. I didn't realize the injury was still a question there. And I was like, Tate Ratledge is right there. There are some more guard answers here. And you have Jonah Jackson starting for you, who's had injury issues and only played like 2 games last season. To me, that screamed, you need a guard. So that was more of my critical, or how critical I was of the Trapillo pick. And frankly, hearing so much from Trapillo and from the coaches about Trapillo since they picked him, I'm starting to really love the pick because I'm sitting here going, this guy has a lot of the intangible traits mentally and like from a coachability standpoint, apparently, that you look for. He has a lot of physical traits that you look for. And you know what? The Bears might have gotten themselves a steal here, is how I'm starting to feel. Don't quote me on that. We got to see him in pads first.
Yeah, but I think as I just said, if any like of the diehard Bears fans is thinking the way you and I are, because the coaches are suggesting it. Like the average Bear fan who may not be paying too much attention in the offseason, he might become surprised come August and September hearing about this younger kid. But I didn't have a draft grade or anything like that on him. I was surprised because I just read draft magazines. I listen to you on Bears on Tap. Like for me, it's like, okay, yeah, this seems to be a pretty high for what he was supposed to be drafted about. But I did want to circle back real quick about the Karan experiment. I think I'm out. I think I'm at this point what you said. He was drafted by a different guy, a different head coach, and like a different scheme. And so I just think that Ben Johnson might be ready to try his own guys. There was a lottery ticket to begin with. We all knew that. I don't know whether he could be a swing guard even at this point, maybe, but I haven't even heard that at this point.
He's a weird fit at guard because his arms are so long. Like it's hard to generate short area power with your upper body when your arms are that long, and guard is a lot of short area power. Like that's what it's not to say you want short arms there, but to have 36-inch long arms, that is freaky long. That might be tough. It might also be okay if he's strong enough, but like it's hard to know until you see the guy play there.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Like the left tackle spot, it's funny. Years prior, we could have said the entire offensive line, and maybe we still can. But right now, we're talking about. I feel like it's in a positive way. Like Trapillo's playing so well that he's being argued to play, to take Braxton's role. And the other one, we're just discussing a swing tackle, like a backup. So I feel like even in that regards, again, here's me being glass half full, compared to years past when we talk about offensive line where we're just scared. I'm a little bit more optimistic coming this year.
Well, here's one of the things with Trapillo that's really exciting to me. And was the second I realized it in pre-draft, research. His dad played in the NFL. He knows what it means to be in the NFL and the work it takes to stay there. And he is already showing that and putting that out there of I am here to work. I know what I need to do and I'm doing it. And that goes just so far for an offensive lineman in this league. Like the understanding of next man up, the understanding of treat every moment as if you are the starter, even if you're not. Like it's even if Braxton is the starter week 1, if he goes down, I have no doubts that Trapillo is going to get in there and know his assignments, and which is not a given in the NFL for your backup offensive lineman to really know what they're doing on all these different plays, on everything. It's easy to kind of sleepwalk. So I've heard, to sleepwalk through the offensive line meetings and not take it as if you are the starter when you're the backup. And I don't think he's a guy who's going to do that. I think he's a guy who's attacking every day. He even said in his press conference the other day, his only goal is to be better than yesterday, right? Like every day needs to be the best version of him going forward. And like that is the type of incremental improvement you look for in an offensive lineman. That mindset is just so, it's frankly, and this is not to try to trash anybody, but it's the opposite of Karan Amagaji's statements last year coming in of just like, I'm here to like, it felt like he was like, I'm here to kick ass. I mean, it was almost like more of a defensive lineman mentality, right? Like, and I don't want at offensive guard, I want that. Offensive guard, I want the WWE wrestler talking shit, like getting wild with it, like Macho Man Randy Savage. At offensive tackle, I want a Buddhist. I want a Zen master. I want a guy who understands like that you win some, you lose some, but everything it balances out in the universe correctly. Like, because they're different spots. That offensive tackle balances everything. On the inside, it's more of a bar fight.
Yeah, but when you bring it up that way, you're right. With his dad having had that experience, what Karan would say is probably what a majority of kids would say.
Yeah.
You're saying what you think the media wants to hear, what the coach wants to hear. That I'm a dog, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna be the best there is or whatever. But Trapillo kind of understands that he's been coached by his dad. It's like, hey, look, this is different. Just be better, just practice hard, put your head down, make sure the coaches notice. Make sure you let the coaches notice. Let them know that you're playing your butt off and that you're continuing to strive to get better. But don't be the focal point. Don't try to make a big show of yourself off the field. Make a show of yourself on the field.
This has the potential to sound really dumb in the future, and I know it. But like I was talking to my friend Robert Schmitz at one point pre-draft, and it was like I sent him a picture of like Will Campbell and like in his wild suits going into pre-games at LSU, and like him loving the camera, and I was kind of like, it doesn't sit well with me how much this guy likes the camera, and it's such a meatball take. It's such a like just meathead like, but on the offensive line, I don't want the guys who seek the attention. I want the guys who are putting their head like I don't even know how to. The guys who want to stay away from the ruckus of the media, not the guys seeking out the attention. And that sounds stupid. It might be stupid. Will Campbell's probably going to end up being a really good football player. It's not a reason to not draft him. It's just like a little like thought moment in my head, and that's what Trapillo kind of fits. And that's what, frankly, most of this offensive line fits. Like Joe Thuney, he might have had the most boring press conference of all time when he was traded here. Like Darnell Wright doesn't really say much at all to the media. Like Jonah Jackson, he had a little fun in his, and Drew Dahlman, like it was just very tame, and that's what you want, right? You don't want the guys who are, charming everybody on your offensive line. You want the guys who are just getting it done with some grit and some dirt.
I'm doing a quick brain exercise while you're talking right now. Like I'm trying to think in the past, not just the Bears, but any offensive lineman who was just known as a loudmouth. You can think of centers, obviously with. I
mean, Olin was on the field, but he wasn't in the media.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, true. I mean, he's making up for it now a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. Like the consensus is, even when I think of the Hall of Fame offensive linemen, it wasn't really, celebrating, dancing, all that. It's methodical, do your job, workmanlike. So I know you said it might sound
say Will Campbell isn't that. It's not to say Will Campbell isn't that. It was just like I just didn't like his suits pretty much, which is stupid. And I admit that's so stupid, but it is what it is. Now, Bear Truth 9 asked what kept Ozzie out of the first or second round. What issues are there? Frankly, he's 6'8" with 33-inch arms. Like so he doesn't have he has average length, right? But at 6'8", you also have a leverage disadvantage. So if he can't get that first contact, he has the potential to get forklifted. I do think that his footwork is a lot smoother and quicker than Braxton Jones. And I do think his hand technique is already more advanced than Braxton Jones. So I do think that will, like, if we're just talking like I guess I shouldn't give him that much credit. Based on his college tape, it seems like his feet and his hands are at a pretty advanced point. I don't want to directly compare it to Braxton until I see Ozzie against NFL competition, because it's a whole different speed of play. But I do think that that those two things give him a chance to anchor well enough to not get forklifted the way that Braxton tends to, because Braxton's big issue, right? It is he can't make that first contact, and he gets out of position a lot with his feet. But that makes Ozzie a bit riskier, right, than some of the other offensive tackles in the draft who, some of the other guys, like what was the kid out of tech? Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks don't work at tackle. He's going to be a hell of an offensive guard.
Sure.
Ozzie don't work at tackle. I don't know what the hell he is. He's just too damn tall and slender to be a guard. Like he won't be able to work inside the same way, in my opinion. In the NFL, he'll just get out leveraged constantly. So to me, that forces him to drop when you see that lowers a guy's floor, right? Like Kelvin Banks' floor was automatically higher than Ozzy Trapillo's because Kelvin Banks can be a good guard. Like that's pretty clear. I don't think Ozzy has the same thing, so his floor automatically has to go down. That drops a guy down the draft some.
No, I think that's a very valid point. Let's just hope this positive momentum that seemingly he's built during the summer makes it so that we don't have to worry about what he'd look like as a guard.
Yeah, and frankly, I like a lot of his technique. I like a lot of there's a smoothness and a calmness to his game that I really like at offensive tackle. Basically, like that's where I land with it. And he does that without losing nasty as a run blocker to me. He aims to finish blocks. He's not Tevin Jenkins, right? He's not going to be out here just plowing through dudes and throwing them in the dirt. But he does aim to finish, which matters to me as well. He's not contact averse in any way, which is huge on the offensive line. But moving on, Sonny, where do you see a position battle breaking out in camp outside of that left tackle spot?
I don't know if it's a position battle, but I did want to bring up one more thing that I kind of I have my eyes on in this during the camp, because it's kind of a position battle, but like we know it's Swift's job, but it was no secret all offseason that we were looking to upgrade from that position. So I think what I'm actually very curious to see is him come to camp, realize he is the guy. He's going to be the guy, but it was no secret that they tried to upgrade from the guy. Ben Johnson's worked with him before. Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, they made it clear that they just missed out on drafting a running back by a position or two positions. And so, Swift hears all this stuff. I really want to see how that relationship is going to work. Whether, Ben's got more ideas. He was very defensive about Swift during the press conference. And so I want to see how he's going to make this situation work. Again, I can't foresee any sort of situation where Swift is not the number one guy at that running back spot, but that's something I absolutely have my eye on.
Yeah, and that's something I'm very interested in as well. I do think they wanted Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins or a handful of other guys, and they just kept missing on them. But that's a different thing. And I do think Monangai and Roschon Johnson can be decent role players in any NFL offense, but I don't think either of them are true strong committee participants. Like they're okay committee participants, but they're not guys you're saying we're handing them 40% of the snaps or 30% of the snaps. Like I think you generally want to be a little lower than that with both those guys. But with Swift, it's interesting, right? I kind of get, or I have a theory for why Ben Johnson is so defensive of it, because I don't think he's out on Swift. I think if he was out on Swift, they would have been more aggressive in getting a running back in the draft, probably in the draft, but because there were too many there in this class for you to miss on all of them if you really were worried about Swift. To me, my thought process here is one, I think this offense is going to be more pass heavy than anyone is expecting. We're talking about when Ben Johnson got asked the other day, what does he want in his offensive tackle? And the first thing he said was the most important thing for an offensive tackle is pass protection. That's not what I saw in Detroit.
Sure, yeah.
Penny Sewell's the best run blocker in the NFL. That's not what I saw in Detroit. He's a really good pass blocker too, but when you're going from Jared Goff, who needs the run game, to Caleb Williams, I'm wondering if Ben Johnson is cooking up a little more than what we're expecting to be a pass heavier offense, especially when, your first draft pick was Colston Loveland, your second draft pick was Luther Burden, and an offensive tackle with your fourth draft pick, all in the top 70 picks or 60 picks. They clearly went pass heavy on what they're attacking here. Joe Thuney is a better pass blocker than run blocker. Drew Dahlman is the one. Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson are probably the two additions that are more run centric than pass. But I don't know. I just can't help but think that this offense is gonna be more pass centric than any of us think, because Papa's got a brand new Ferrari in the garage. Caleb Williams is a damn like fun quarterback to scheme for, and he's got a whole lot of weapons around him.
But do you think that we would be so pass heavy because he couldn't upgrade from Swift? You know what I mean? I guess that's the question I ask in a roundabout way. Like, if they had gotten the Henderson or, you know, one of the other running backs they targeted, do you think it would have been with the eyes towards being a little bit more balanced or continued what he was doing in Detroit? Or you think that he was content with Swift and he was going to say, hey, you know what? Let's just see where the dominoes fall. They just happen to fall on the passing side. And so he's like, all right, well, those are the cards I'm going to play with then.
Well, so that fits into one of the comments here from Bear Truth 9 talking about how they wanted Henderson. To me, if Henderson was their guy, that reads even more like they're going to be a pass-heavy offense.
Yeah, because
I don't think Henderson fits the outside zone scheme that you're looking at running from a rushing offense perspective. And I think Henderson is an extremely good fit in an offense that's going to ask him to run routes and play in pass pro a lot. He was probably the best pass pro running back I've seen in 3 years coming out of college. So Henderson to me is a even bigger trigger of this offense to be pass heavier. I thought they'd be heavier on Judkins, frankly, because I expected a run heavy offense. If Henderson was their top guy, that tells me even more that I think that's going to be a pass heavy offense. But again, this is all just pure speculation. But back on the Swift aspect a little bit, I think one thing that does get a little bit kind of thrown to the side here is when Ben Johnson took over in Detroit in that year where Swift kind of lost his role in 2022. Swift is 23 years old, third year in the league, former first-round pick. I bet you there were some words there. There were some butting heads. There was some, you guys spent a first-round pick on me to do this type stuff, or second round, I'm sorry, 35th overall. But still, you guys spent 35 overall on me to be a part-time back. Like, I bet you there was some of that after regime changes in Detroit. And like, then he gets traded, right? He gets to the other side of the equation. He goes to Philly, plays behind a strong O-line, then comes to Chicago and plays on a crap team. He's coming into 26 years old now. The male brain does not fully develop until you're 25.
For the lucky ones. Yeah.
I'm guessing that Swift has had some time to reflect on what happened in Detroit. Some maybe if there were issues, right? Like, it's never been truly said that there were issues between the staff and Swift there, but like you traded the guy, like he lost his job. I'm sure there was some stuff going on there. I imagine that he is a more mature individual now than he was when he was 23. Even though it's only 3 years, I think it's an important 3 years. It's been a long journey for him of playing on a team that in the Eagles, not last year, but 2 years ago, when they completely cratered and lost out and then lost in the playoffs. And while on Detroit, they were an ascending team. And then coming to the Bears, where it was just a complete disaster last year. I bet you that he might have a bit different of a perspective than he did when he was in Detroit with Ben Johnson. And I'm willing to bet the brain development aspect there and the just the human experience aspect might have made him see stuff a little differently. It might have him working a little differently in the facility and outside the facility.
I think that's a fantastic point. You know, just to even piggyback on that, he was the 35th pick of the draft. You know, at the time, Ben Johnson was still just a newer name, just a hotshot up and comer. But, you know, he may have felt like he had a certain level of more importance than this Ben Johnson character. Now, obviously, situation has reversed. Ben Johnson was far and away the number one target of any coaching opening. And even, I would argue, you know, coaching teams that may not have had an opening would have been interested to upgrade with Ben Johnson had they had the choice. So Swift, he knows that. He knows Ben Johnson is, one of the premier up-and-coming head coaches here. He's not going to win this battle. So that combined with the maturation that you just discussed over the last 3 years, I think he may come in with a more mature veteran aspect and it's like, okay, you know what? This is what didn't work out too well last time. Let's go over it. Let's figure out what kind of changes can be made and let's make it work this time. Because, 26 is young, but it's also, he's got maybe one more contract in him and he's going to want to maximize that opportunity.
I don't know about you, 26, 27 years old, when I started to get a lot of clarity in my adulthood of like who I am, what I want. Like at 23, I was clueless.
Hey, I'm 41 and I still haven't figured it out. So lucky you.
I said a lot more. Now I didn't get. I didn't find, to bring it back to Buddhism. I didn't find like the serenity of life or anything.
Your moment of Zen.
Yeah, my moment of Zen. But like I found something in there. Now I don't want to. I also don't want to oversell this as buy all the Swift stock you can. Like I just think there's a chance that he's going to be better than he was last year in this offense with a better O-line and a better functioning offense overall, because he did show plenty of flashes last year. Like there were times last year where he was the best player on the Bears offense by a decent margin. And there were times where it was like, why the hell can't this guy read outside zone? We need to see a lot more of the former and less of the latter in this year, but especially because they're going to be running a lot more outside zone apparently. But I'm interested to see how this all plays out, and I do think I have a thought with Roschon, where if they knew they were going to use Roschon as a short yardage back last year, I'm wondering if they had him bulk up, and because he did not have the same bursts last year, and frankly, I was never that high on Roschon from a burst standpoint. I always thought he was more of a complimentary back than anything, but he definitely had more bursts as a rookie than he did last year. I'm wondering if they had him beef up to be the short yardage guy and he lost some of that burst, or if the concussions caught up to him. It could be either, but I'm kind of hoping that that if it was the added mass, he cuts that weight back down. We can see more of the guy we saw as a rookie.
Yeah, Roschon's interesting because, again, we're going to say this about a lot of players, right? Like, he was drafted by the previous regime. And so now, Ben Johnson's seen tape of him. So he's one of those guys who I want to see is Roschon just playing the role that he's meant to play, the number 2 running back at an NFL level. Sometimes you hope that gradually with the running back, they start off like a Chase Brown, right? Like a guy who's drafted late, but progressively he shows more, and then maybe he can earn and become that number 1 guy. Roschon really hasn't shown anything to suggest that. So, as you said, is it maybe you change his body around a little bit, game plan him a little bit different? Again, I'm going to keep repeating myself, but I mean it. I'm glad we have Ben Johnson in charge now, because I trust the way his brain works, and I trust that whatever he sees in Roschon, that he's going to maximize Roschon's chances to be productive at the NFL level.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Kyle Monangai fits in that too, of like, I could see either of those guys being somewhat comparable to like a Jamal Williams style player. Jamal Williams had, I think it was 17 touchdowns with Detroit under Ben Johnson. Jamal Williams is never the most talented back, but he was a gritty runner who just worked his ass off. And I think that's kind of what Monangai and Johnson need to be in the NFL. So, and I'm not saying I think either will be that this year, but I think especially Monangai, like, if he is that this year, I'm thrilled. But like, I think it might take some time to get there. But I do think there is some future for him in this offense as being that more bruiser style back. But kicking it over to the defense, I want to pose a question. Bigger year for who, Sonny? Tyreek Stevenson or Jaquan Brisker?
Fantastic question. I think I think I'm leaning Brisker still. The secondary is going to be so much fun for me to watch this year, just because so many guys are going to be, their contracts are coming up, and particularly, in the backfield. One of the guys, I can't wait to watch is Major Burns, because I think if we have a breakout from him, it's going to make Ryan Poles' job a lot easier moving forward. But just to get back to your question, I think I'm still leaning.
Can you tell me a little bit? Because I know very little about Major Burns. I just know the name is funny and like that he's there.
No, I mean, I couldn't tell you much about him. I just mean in the sense where we've got so many of those guys in the defensive backfield whose contracts are coming up in the next year or two that we're going to need to supplement that. We can't sign everyone.
Yeah.
And so, it's a simple matter of, is he a guy that after a year shows enough that, hey, we can let so-and-so go, because I think Major can take that next step. So when I think of the secondary in general, when you talk about committing all that big money to Brisker or Stevenson, we already have, with Johnson, whatnot, it's he's just, in order for this team to win a Super Bowl, we need Caleb to maximize himself, obviously, but more importantly, we need to maximize the roster around him while he's on his rookie deal. And for that to happen, in the next year or two, we're going to have to play some salary cap games. And that's why I think Burns is just one of those players who, if we hit a home run with that pick, or even a stand-up double with the Burns pick, I think it makes the dealing with the salary cap situation around Caleb a little bit easier to maximize that roster to win a Super Bowl. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, frankly, I knew nothing about Major Burns other than his name. I wasn't even sure if he was a corner or a safety. And I'm just looking at it now, like I'm interested. Like 6'2", safety, 207 pounds, ran a 4.5 out of LSU and Georgia. Yeah, there's a lot to like just in that little snippet of a profile right there. I'm interested. I wonder why he went undrafted. I have never watched his tape, but that's interesting. Because yeah, you're right. I do, like, they're going to have some questions coming up here financially of like, do you want to, like, is it worth re-signing Jaquan Brisker? And this is a contract year for him. Big contract year for him. So I agree with you. Like, I lean towards Brisker in this question because in my mind, Tyreek Stevenson's going to get more chances after this. He just, if he sucks this year again and the Bears move on from him, there's going to be a team who had a high draft grade on him and says he physically has things that others don't, and we're going to take a chance. Look at Artie Burns. Artie Burns has bounced around the league. Artie Burns keeps getting chances because he's a high drafted cornerback who has traits. Tyreek Stevenson will keep getting chances in my mind. Jaquan Brisker, because of the concussion questions, I'm not sure he will keep getting chances. So this is a giant year for him to show he can stay healthy for a year. He can avoid concussions, and he can be a difference maker so he can go get paid before the concussions ruin his career.
It's not just that. Brisker's kind of a pain in the butt when he's sitting at home. Like, if you're a coaching staff, some of the stuff he's tweeting out and stuff like that, that's maybe it was just kind of in the moment, but it's not like people don't notice that, so I don't think he helped himself out doing that at all.
Yeah. And Bear Truth 9 says if Brisker plays full season without injury, you can franchise him a year. Man, I would feel guilty about, like, just as a fan base, like supporting that. I would feel like that's not cool. Like, let the guy get paid. He's like, I don't know. When a guy has that many concussions, has had that many concussion issues, I'd feel like, I don't know. That's why I'm not a GM. You got to take that out of it, right? And my apologies if you hear my dog in the background. He's going nuts upstairs for some reason. But I think that about wraps it up. I mean, was there anything else you want to touch on with the defense, Sonny, that you're thinking?
On the defensive side, no. I like what I've heard. Trying to think. No, I'm taking a look at the roster. I think the secondary is where I've got my eyes on, mainly over what we just discussed. I think it's going to be a really good one this year, but Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen are going to have to figure out who that next generation is. Otherwise, we may have to, play with the cap a little bit a year or two earlier than we planned on doing so.
Yeah. The secondary is going to be big this year. I think for Dennis Allen, I think of Dennis Allen's defense as being very secondary centric. Like he can, in my mind, when I watch his tape, I get the feeling that he believes he can scheme pressure, but he can't scheme the back end beyond its talent. He can scheme the pressure beyond its talent, not the back end. So he needs high level talent on the back end. And I do think he has a lot of talent here to work with from that standpoint, which I think is going to be fun to watch. I hope we see Tyreek take a step here and take some a step of growth from the off the field perspective to, really be putting in the work, putting in the time to really capitalize on that talent. I think Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson are a great combo here. I do have some questions about Kevin Byard, though. I'm not sure what Kevin Byard is at this point in his career. I think he's going to be valuable in this defense just from a mental perspective, but I need to see a bit more from him from a playmaking standpoint, from a decisiveness standpoint than I feel like I saw last year. Oh, you're on mute, Sonny.
Sorry, he's another guy who I think we talked a lot positively about last season, in some of the midweek shows, but kind of like Swift, we also had some like by the end of the season, we were kind of wondering, all right, how much does he actually have left in the tank? And so, yeah, he's going to be a guy who maybe, again, that's the type of guy who Burns hopefully can take over for in a year. It's hilarious how much I'm bringing up Major Burns' name in this episode when he's just going to be a marginal guy this year. I don't want to, overdo it, but we've got questions. I think that's all you're essentially saying.
Yeah. And great question here from Bear Truth 9 asking, how would you rank Dennis Allen as a D coordinator? What tier is he in? For me, he's at least tier 2, probably tier 1. I mean, this is a guy who gave Tom Brady fits. This is a guy who consistently put out very strong defenses despite not top tier talent. Like I feel like his defenses consistently exceeded their talent, and that is a tier 1 D coordinator in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where if you had given me a list before the offseason started and Dennis Allen's name was on that list of potential defensive coordinators, he would have been one of the top 2 or 3 guys, not even knowing the rest of the list, regardless, just because of who he is and his past and the reputation that he brings with him. So, yeah, I mean, I would argue tier 1, these guys a little bit better than I do. But if no other reason than that, like, a guy who doesn't necessarily play on the analytics side, like for me, I know what Dennis Allen is capable of doing. And so I'm not as excited as I am about the Ben Johnson hire, but I still think we made a great hire on that side of the football.
I mean, I think Dennis Allen is one of the few defense coordinators who got 2 chances to be a head coach. That speaks very loudly. He is a guy who, I mean, if you want to talk, we were saying that some 49ers fan was giving you crap about Dennis Allen not being good with analytics. I don't really know what analytics he was looking at because, sure, maybe their defense wasn't that good last year. He was only there for 8 games last year, and the first 5 games of the year they were very good. And I don't think that New Orleans defense was all that talented last year. Marshawn Lattimore took a step off. Like they had really good safeties, but their D line was it's Chase Young. Like they're a bunch of middle tier to red chip guys. They really had no blue chip guys in that D line. They had no guy. Like it's almost kind of similar to what the Bears have here. Like Montez Sweat to Chase Young. Probably somewhat similar. Outside of that, you're talking about a bunch of guys who are solid to good, but you don't have any true difference makers there. That's kind of what the Saints had on their D line last year, and I thought they did some good stuff until they lost the locker room and gave up 50 points to the Buccaneers, and then it was all downhill from there. But that's the point where Dennis Allen was kind of, you're done.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah, but Sonny, I think that's all we got for tonight's show. So thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for watching, listening, commenting, and we hope you guys have a great evening. Sonny, why don't we out of here with a good old bear down?
Bear down, Q.
Bear down.